Good afternoon and welcome to our latest BeaconLit pop-up event. I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, who is Amanda Robson, the best-selling author. And Amanda has been called the Queen of Obsession. After graduating, she worked in medical research at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and at the Poisons Unit in Guy's Hospital, where she became a co-author of a book on cyanide poisoning, a subject which has set her in good stead for writing her dark and twisting best-selling psychological thrillers. Amanda attended the Faber novel writing course, writes full-time, and My Darling, she's out on the 24th of August, is her fourth novel. And through the magic of lockdown technology, today she's talking to us from her yacht, the Heartbeat. So welcome, Amanda.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join BeaconLit.
Lovely to have you. So let's get straight into talking about the books. I think your books have covered most of the 7 deadly sins over the 4 volumes. I don't think I've spotted gluttony or sloth in there yet, but I think most of them are pretty well covered. But as I hinted in my introduction, I think if there's one common theme, it's obsession. Would you go along with that?
Yes, I think so. I mean, a lot of my characters are rather obsessive individuals. I think there's a bit of a smattering of psychopaths, and also when I worked at the Poisons Unit at Guy's, I didn't realise just what an effect it would have on me for the rest of my life, because there are an awful lot of people in my novels that are still getting poisoned.
Yes, poison. Poison and drugs are quite a theme of yours.
They are, yes, and I don't intentionally do it. They just sort of the characters suddenly seem to slip into the mode that they're getting drugs off the dark net, or they're a dentist or a doctor who's able to get hold of things that can be overused in a very unpleasant way.
I mean, presumably your experience not only taught you a lot of stuff about how these substances can be used in unpleasant ways, but maybe, as you suggested, sort of ways that they can actually be obtained by people who don't have quite such close access, perhaps.
Yes, yeah. My character. Well, I think, yeah. Although I think people who work in the medical profession must have more access, or in a pharmacy shop, or. But unfortunately, I think people can get hold of all sorts of things on the internet now, which they probably couldn't before.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's not that difficult to think of a way of your characters getting hold of dangerous things.
I must say that the characters in my novels, when all else fails, just to say it's amazing what you can get on the internet these days. That's my sort of throwaway. This is how they're taking it on the internet.
I don't want to really get into. I wouldn't really like to get into the dark net to find out what happens.
No,
but
I'd be terrified that somebody found me on there.
But I have watched a video by somebody who's an expert in it, and he made it sound as if it was a little bit easier than we might like.
Yeah. So why does obsession seem to hold such a fascination for you, do you think?
Well, my first novel, my working title was Lies Never Die. And it was the publishing house that decided to call it Obsession, because I think most psychological thrillers twist on people not telling the truth, sort of misunderstandings and lies. You know, there's a number of novels when I'm reading them, and the whole crux, the only reason the problem's carrying on is because the husband's not telling the wife the truth that he slept with another woman, or that he's accidentally done something dreadful, and everyone's trying to cover it up. So I think, in a way, lies is more of a basis than possibly obsession. But my characters are just a bit wacky obsessed. I'm not obsessed with obsession myself.
No, but take it a bit further. I mean, why is that sort of obsessive lies and misunderstandings sort of mindset? Why is that something that you're so interested in? I mean, you obviously are.
I don't really know. I don't really know. Yeah, I can't answer that, I'm afraid. I thought that nearly all of these characters in the psychological thrillers are a little bit over obsessed about things. So I hadn't particularly noticed it was a particular thread in my work, I suppose.
No, maybe it isn't. But your books do seem to really get inside the minds of these sort of characters, and hardly any of them is a particularly comfortable place to be. And I noticed that you write very much in the first person present tense, which sort of seems to enhance the immediacy as well.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like writing in the first person. I find it easier to get inside the character's head somehow if I'm writing in that tense. And I often use this addressing the other person, the person that they hate or the person they love or the person with the you tense. So that is first. So that's second person. That's second person. So yeah. I sort of slip from first person to second, and I just find it more immediate. When I first started writing, I did use third person, which I know is very good if you want more of an overview, isn't it? But because I used to enjoy amateur dramatics, when I'm writing, I'm absolutely pretending to be that person. And I then find it easier to just write as that person seeing it. I just find that easier.
Do you almost feel that you're sort of becoming or adopting the sort of skin and persona of that character as you're writing them, or do you still remain different from them? I don't mean you literally become a murderer, obviously, but
no, but every scene when I'm writing it, I'm pretending to be that person. You know, just like if you were in a drama hall doing some improvisation work or something, I pretend to be that person while I'm doing it, but it doesn't stay with me. So I know some writers say that if they write a very unpleasant scene, they then feel very upset. But I don't, because I don't know why, because I suppose I know I'm just pretending, you know. I mean, occasionally I felt very upset, but not usually. Whereas some writers say they can feel very traumatized, you know, if they've just written a nasty scene.
No, I mean, I see authors who sort of, you know, kill off a character and they walk away from writing the scene crying their eyes out, and I've never done that. Even if it's a character that I've quite liked.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Although sometimes when I've been writing lately, I'm the book I'm writing now, my new book. My editor wanted a different end to me. She wanted a mishap to happen to one of my favourite characters, and I just can't do it. I mean, I haven't told her yet, but I'm writing the whole story so there'll be an extra twist so that my character that's my favourite one is going to be the dominant one and the sort of survivor, because I just can't do it the way she wants it. It doesn't suit me. I really do like this character, so I want her to win.
I think
there you are. That's a good way for my next novel, isn't it? Just killing it in the end. But anyway, I better delete that.
Do you have that sort of freedom in the end?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and the way Avon HarperCollins treat us is it's our book, so they make all sorts of very helpful suggestions, but you only do them if you agree. So I have had to have a few arguments about things, but generally we've always managed, because it's a difficult balance, isn't it, for a writer? I mean, you must find that way. You have your books edited. I mean, you've got to take criticism and you've got to listen, and quite often somebody else can really see something that you've missed, but at the end of the day you're the one who's got to correct it. So if you really feel it won't work, you simply can't do it. So they don't push you like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was going to say, I always feel as if, you know, if somebody offers you criticism or suggestions, at the end of the day, you can choose to not take them on board. But if you're doing that, you need to know why you're not taking them on board, and you ignore them altogether at your peril, basically.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's such a difficult balance, because you've got to have yourself confident, especially when before I was. If you just listen, it took me a while to get enough confidence in what I was doing and what I wanted to do, because if you're too underconfident and you just change it what everybody says all the time, you know, even if you're in a book group, people tend to disagree, don't they? If you've got 10 people in a book group, you won't all like the same book, and you'll probably have a bit of an argument about which books you like and which books you don't. So if you actually just take everybody's suggestions and criticism on board, you've just not got your own cohesive piece of work anymore. And so it's very hard. You have to be careful. When I was on the Faber course, a writer came to lots of writers came to talk to us, and I forget which writer said this, but she might have been Jill Dawson. Anyway, she stood in front of us all and she said, you have to learn to listen to criticism, and you have to learn to listen behind it, because sometimes the person who's not the writer, they say something like, oh, it's very slow moving, why don't you do X, Y, and Z? And the criticism is probably right, but they've not written it. They don't know the structure of it like you do, and they're not necessarily the person who knows how to change it. So I've sometimes found that even with, you know, very high up editors at HarperCollins, they'll say, make a suggestion that it just doesn't actually work. If you do what they say, the whole plot will be rocked, spoiled. And but they're saying it for a reason, because there's something not quite right. And so you say to them, well, I can't do that to change it, but I think if I do this, it will have the same effect. And then of course they're happy, you see.
Yeah,
it's just a balance, isn't it?
it is always, I think. Let's one more thing about the characters, and then I'd like to move on and talk about your new book. But do you think everybody has the potential for dark thoughts and dark deeds like your characters do?
Well, yeah, possibly, because in these psychological thrillers, you're getting people who are just put into a very difficult situation and they're thrashing out, don't you? It's a sort of difficult situation that most of us wouldn't get into. So, and it's domestic noir, and a lot of people, things seem nice on the surface and they're not. But so in a way, I think you could say that, but I actually don't think most of us would go around killing our husbands and friends. I think, and as I said, I think it comes down to lying a bit too, because some of the pickles my characters get in. I mean, this hasn't happened in any of my novels that I can think of anyway. But you know, there are if you've had an accident and a car, you know, like that woman who went back to America. That sounds really horrible. But I wouldn't do what she did. I wouldn't run away from facing the music if I'd killed someone's son. So, and I think most of us, if we have accidentally done something awful, we would probably feel far more comfortable to pick up the phone to the police and take it on the chin. Whereas in all novels, not just mine, but all these nasty thrillers, these people do behave in a worse way than, well, I don't know what percentage of the population. I mean, the police know they have to put up with so much. But I mean, from my sort of, I've lived a very sheltered middle-class life. I mean, I would say actually none of my friends would behave in the way that my characters behave.
So none of your characters are based on people that you know then?
No. Well, no. Except, I tell you what, I've always hated bitchy women. A lot of my characters are very bitchy women. And I went to an all-girls grammar school. I had the misfortune to go to an all-girls grammar school for a year when I'd been at a lovely mixed comprehensive until I was 17. And the girls there were very bitchy. And I had a very bitchy girlfriend at university who I found very difficult. And I keep absolutely away from bitchy women. And Schoolgate mums, if anyone was bitchy, I'm just very wary. but it's always fascinated me just how bitchy some people can be. And I've got lovely friends, lovely girlfriends, but I find it quite easy to write bitchy scenes. So I don't know why. I think it's because I
Writing
have
against
got
type, Amanda. That's
well,
what
I've got well, you've seen me with my lovely friend. I mean, but I just don't like bitchy women. So I think that's maybe why I enjoy,
putting them through the mill.
novels.
Let's talk about My Darling, and let's talk about your latest book, which I finished last week, by the way. It's a real page turner, and it's got more twists and turns than a switchback ride. And although it's still very much a psychological thriller, I felt it was much more of a pacey thriller of a book than the previous ones.
Yes.
I wonder what was the germ of an idea that got you started on this one?
Well, the idea just came into my head really, really quickly, and to be honest, I didn't have much time because my publishing house were interested in giving me another 2-book deal, and I'd sent some ideas, and they wanted an acquisition meeting, and one of my main ideas that I really wanted to write, they didn't actually like, and I honestly had about 2 hours flat to think of a plot, and it just came to me. I just made it up on the spur of the moment without really knowing whether the forensics would work out. I mean, I told you at the crime fest, I remember, because I was so worried about it. So then I didn't have to write it for quite a while because I had 2 others to finish. And then as it approached me writing it, I looked at this synopsis that I'd made up in about 20 minutes. And I thought, for heaven's sake, I simply can't do it. And then you very kindly put me in touch with Claire Heron, the senior crime scene investigator, and I was actually, this sounds awful, I was hoping she would say it was impossible, so I could go back to Hopkins and say, can't do it. Oh, she said it's a great idea, and told me, said you just have to change the sexes of who gets murdered around a bit, and she just taught me so much, and she was so helpful. And then I found it really, really hard to write because, as you say, it's very different from my others, which I've written much more easily. It was like a nightmare. It was like doing a physics problem or something, which, because I didn't like physics, and in the end, I didn't like it because the characters were so horrible. I sent it back to my editor, and I've got a new editor, and she helped me. She was really helpful because all the things she didn't like about it were the things I didn't like about it. Like, the characters were just too horrible, and she sort of helped me. She gave me a few ideas of how to soften them. So I then I went back, and then I started to really enjoy it. I mean, I'm pleased with it now. I'm not trying to put people off reading it. I'm really pleased with it. I'm really pleased.
I think it's your best book.
I know, I'm really glad you said that, because I really love your work, as you know, and you're really good with your police procedural, and it's a challenge to me because I've never been in the police. So if I've managed to do something that is a bit more police procedurally because of the forensic man working with the police, I'm really pleased now. I'm really excited I've done it. But I suppose it's not always the way. The thing that you find the easiest is the thing that in the end comes out better, is it? It's not what life works. So, I mean, the fact I've had to work so hard at it, found so difficult, is probably a good thing.
So there was I thinking, Amanda has decided this time to write a bit of a fast-paced thriller, and you're now telling me that it all came about by accident.
Well, I don't think I can do another one. I don't know. I'm now writing one about a bitchy mother-in-law who's being, really bitchy mother-in-law. So, and I'm enjoying writing that a lot. So,
but you better not tell us at this stage if she comes to a sticky end or not.
What do you think?
Here you are. I mean, here I am, sort of having been stuck indoors for months and being able to get out and about a little bit. Here you are on your boat, and I know you were missing that for quite a long time. But what's been the impact of lockdown on your writing? Have you just carried on as normal, or has it been really difficult to get into it? Or I hear
I've
that some
found,
writers have really struggled and others have felt they've been even more productive. So I just wonder what the impact has been on you.
I've, yes, I've found it harder to get as much work done, and I really don't know why. I think because we were, I told you before, we were isolating as a group, our family, and we were having a lot of fun and doing lots of nice things together and cooking loads of nice meals and making bread and doing this, and to cheer ourselves up really, because we couldn't go out. And I just found that I was doing more jobs, to have a higher standard of life at home, and so I was only getting, normally when I'm on my own, I used to work 6 hours a day, 8 hours, and get loads done. And I was only managing about 4 by the time I'd made the bread and put it in the oven for lunch and done this, done that. I don't know, I found it hard to get as much done, and I've missed seeing my friends. I've missed normal life an awful lot, and I think when you can't do all that people watching, I don't know, I don't know why, but I don't think I've been amazing in lockdown really. And I mean, I'm on the boat now and I'm supposed to be working, and I'm in Brixham and the sun's shining and it's beautiful and I feel like I'm on holiday. So I haven't really been, I'm supposed to be getting on, but I've been a bit lazy, to be honest. So yeah, I could do with life getting back to normal. Yes. What about you? I know I'm supposed to be being interviewed, but how have you found it?
I found when it was first starting out, I found it quite difficult to really sort of settle, and I found it hard to sort of really sort of get into the swing of writing. I don't know, it just sort of knocked me a little bit off of kilter to start with. I mean, I wasn't sort of lockdown terrified or anything like that. It was just things were just different and a bit uncomfortable, but I got my mojo back fairly quickly, and I've been really quite productive since then. Every now and again you get a little bit of a wobble where for all sorts of reasons your strides falters a little bit, but on the whole it's been quite good, and I've probably been more productive than ever. And I don't know about you, but learning so many new skills with technology. I mean, here I am on Zoom. I didn't even know what it was. Skype I'd talked about using, never used. Teams I'd never heard of.
I still never heard of Teams. But I don't know. I'm just I think I was a bit, like you said, a bit concerned. I think we've all been concerned for certain members of our families or what might happen to things. It was very uncertain to begin with, wasn't it? I mean, at least we all know a bit more about what's happening now, I suppose.
But you told me when we spoke briefly yesterday that you have a deadline looming, so I suspect sooner or later that's going to focus your mind massively.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm halfway through my draft of my 5th book, so I haven't been doing so badly. I think partly because I'm getting more used to it all. I'm a bit faster at writing now than I used to be, so I think that's partly why I get away with doing a bit less. But I wanted to go and see my mum and dad, and then I've been on the boat for 3 weeks. So I was, in fact, just before I came on Zoom, I was about to look in my diary, because I can't quite remember how long it is since I last really got my head down. But I got halfway through my book that I'm supposed to hand in on the 1st of November. And in the beginning of September, I'm going to be back full-time, back at home, really concentrating. So I reckon if I've done half in a couple of months, I can do the next half in a couple of months. And I'm enjoying the break. And I think the break will do me good, because then I can see from a distance, you can get too close to your work, can't you? It's sometimes having a break, you get that lovely insight about what needs improving when you come back to it. So I'm hoping I'll be right.
Are you like me, that you have to basically, when you finish the first draft, no matter how good shape you think it's in, you have to put it aside for a period and then come back and look at it afresh?
Yes, I always have to do that. Yes, because you're too close to it and you can't see it. But I think that's standard advice, isn't it, though, to all writers, to leave it for a bit and then come back to it, because otherwise You
I
just
think it
can't see
depends partly on how many books a year you're actually churning out. I think some people are producing 2-3 books a year, and I think they find they haven't really got the luxury to put it in a drawer for several weeks. They pretty well
no.
have to go straight into revising it.
Well, I sometimes I can't bear to wait 2 whole weeks, but even 4 or 5 days can help, can't it?
Yes.
And I find when I've written a chapter, if I write a chapter one day, and I always read it through as soon as I've printed it off, and I improve it again. But even just a night's sleep, and then I read it again, and I can, even a night away from it helps. Do you find that?
Yes, very often, or perhaps a weekend maybe. Take a weekend off if you're being too close to it, or you've got a problem that you need to sort of mull over and let cogitate a little bit. So here you are, a published best-selling author, 4th book, working on your 5th. How would you say it's changed your life?
Well, I think it's made me, because I had an early career in science, and then I was a stay-at-home mum for years, and I absolutely love being at home looking after the children. But I think it's given me a real boost of confidence, because it's something I've always wanted to do, is to write a novel right from when I was young. So I feel as if I've achieved what I want. It's made me feel very sort of comfortable in my own skin, I think, because I loved writing so much. I was obsessed with it, and I did it for quite a long time, and I wasn't published. And so I used to go to parties and I must have been so boring for anyone to talk to, because I just wouldn't tell anyone what, someone saying, what have you been doing now your children are older? And I'd say, oh, going walking, going to work. I wouldn't really I wouldn't tell them I was writing 10 hours a day and I'd never been published, because and so now if people say, oh, what are you doing? It's quite nice to be able to say, well, I'm a writer, and they say, oh, have you been published? It's nice. So I like that. So that's changed my life. And it's also given me an awful lot of fun, because I've had a lot of time on my own with my children having left home, and my husband's very busy with his career. I have an awful lot of time to kill, and I would be bored if all I was doing was going out for lunch, and I don't know what I'd be doing. I mean, I really love it, so that's fantastic for me. And as you know, the other thing I love is, I can't tell you the fun I find with the other writers. There's a real camaraderie, and it's as if everyone understands each other. Because if you're a bit obsessed with writing and you've always been a bit arty-farty, always had your nose in the book, there's an awful lot of people out there who aren't a bit like that, and they think you're a bit odd. Why have you been sitting in your study making up weird stories, and why do you like reading poetry? Whereas we all come together and we understand one another, and I've got a lovely group of friends, and I think that's meant a lot to me too, just the people that I've met. I was thinking, if I didn't get another book deal, or I stopped writing, I'd still want to keep friends with all these lovely people I've met. There's an interesting.
I was going to say,
sorry,
a lot of. Sorry, I think a lot of writers who go along to writing events and meet the people who are actually just like them and doing what they do. The phrase I've heard a lot is, I realised I'd found my tribe.
I feel a bit like that, although I have had lots of lovely groups of friends over the years of all different people. So it sounds a bit harsh on my other friends who I'm still very close to, but I do think we do all feel very comfortable together. So yes, I think that's interesting. There's a play, The Habit of Art. I'm trying to think who. Anyway, it's really funny. I think it's about Ordners when he was old and he'd stopped being able to write. But he was just pretending, he was just enjoying it. I just think he was just still in the habit of being an artist and having all these nice friends. And it's a really hilarious play that I think I could get like that. That I just, even if I'm so old that I can't even do it anymore, I'll still want to just pretend that's what I'm doing.
And maybe tell people that you're definitely working on something.
Well, I met this woman, and when I was young, and we only met her briefly. She was going out with a friend of ours, and she was very, very wealthy, and she'd done an English degree, and she didn't have a job, and we were all like working our socks off, in our first jobs and everything. And I said to her, well, what are you, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm writing a book. And I didn't believe her, because she had all this money, and I just thought, oh, she's just saying that. And I have actually forgotten her name now, but she's become a really successful American novelist, and I've read all of her novels. It's just my brain's gone to China, what with this COVID thing. I just can't remember what's going on. I don't know what day of the week it is half the time at the moment. But she is such a brilliant writer, and I feel so guilty when she said, oh, I'm writing a book, for thinking she was just, she seemed to just be traveling the world and not doing much, but she's a brilliant writer now.
There you go. So you mentioned briefly the Bitchy mother-in-law. So that's the next one, is it?
Yes.
Do we have a working title?
Well, it's called Daughter-in-law at the moment, because the mother-in-law, there was a very successful novel, I think, last year called Mother-in-Law. I haven't read it, but I've got it on my Kindle. So we've had to call it Daughter-in-law, but it's obviously the mother-in-law that's the bitch, not the daughter-in-law.
Is there anything you can share with us about it at the moment?
Well, no, not much. But I mean, I do think it's a major problem a lot of women have, is jealous mothers-in-law. I mean, I've had trouble. I've got loads of friends who've had trouble. So it's something I'm really enjoying, because I do think a lot of women are very overprotective towards their sons, and it's something I've always been interested in as to why. Because I get on really, really well with my daughter-in-law, but I think my son is very good at showing both of us that he loves us, that we both feel very confident in his affection. So I wonder how much of it is, sometimes I'll blame the man a bit, but you just wonder what's the dynamic that causes it. Why between my daughter-in-law Megan and I are we just friends and we just get on and there's no competition? And why in other situations is it like a competition? I mean, I think I was in competition with my mother-in-law. I mean, I think I used to even get annoyed if my husband said, oh, her chicken casserole is the best chicken casserole in the whole world. And I was thinking, oh, he doesn't like my cooking. So I don't know how much of it is my fault or her fault or what. My mother had a very bad experience with my father's mother. And then another friend, several of my friends have had awful trouble too. So I don't know. Was your mum nice to your lovely Chris? Or is this not for the interview? It's not for an interview. It's personal. Sorry.
They were fine, but I know what you mean. I think because I was an only child anyway, and I think there always has to be a new accommodation, a new establishing of relationships when a child gets married and leaves the family home. And, that's probably all I say on that. I've noticed very cunningly, Amanda, that you've probably interviewed me at least as much as I've interviewed you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a talent.
I always like talking to you, Dave.
It's a talent you have. Yeah. I think we've pretty well reached the point where we're going to have to wrap it up. This is the point where we would normally take questions from the audience, but of course the audience are watching this recording online in about a week's time. But this is also the point in which they'd be rushing for the bookstore stall and picking up their copies of all your lovely books and rushing up to you to get them signed. So we can't do that today either. But the details of where they can get your books will appear at the end of this film. So Amanda, thank you so much for coming and being our very special guest today, and looking forward to reading that next book.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, Dave. Okay.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.